Dusty county office, overgrown forest path. Title: The Dollar Shack. Ethan stood inside the dimly lit county clerk's office, the air thick with the scent of mildew and old paper. A wiry clerk slid a brittle manila envelope across the scratched wooden desk. Inside, a crumbling map, a faded black and white photo of a crooked shack surrounded by towering pines, and a property deed with a bold, almost comical price scrawled on it, $1. Last owner stayed 3 nights, the clerk muttered, not making eye contact. Said the woods whispered. Some say it's cursed. Ethan gave a weak chuckle. He wasn't buying it for the comfort, or the folklore. After a brutal divorce, losing his job, and the deafening loneliness of city life, $1 for a roof sounded like a miracle. Curse or not, he needed out. An hour later, he was pushing through thick underbrush, branches clawing at his jacket, boots sinking into moss and fallen leaves. The forest path was barely a trail. More like the memory of one. His backpack was heavy with canned food, batteries, and a notebook he hadn't written in for years. As the sun dipped below the tree line, a clearing emerged. There stood the shack, lopsided, slatted with rotting wood, its windows long shattered. A crooked porch leaned like a drunk. Crows burst from the trees as he approached, scattering into the purple sky. Ethan set his pack down, catching his breath. For the first time in months, he felt the quiet settle over him, no horns, no screams, no shouting. Just the hush of wind through old trees. He smiled bitterly. Home sweet home, he muttered. He didn't know yet, someone had been living here long before him. And she hadn't spoken a word in 3 years. Inside the shack, nighttime. Moonlight slips through broken boards. Ethan spent the day clearing out fallen branches and sweeping layers of dirt from the sagging floor. As night fell, he lit the old lantern he found under a pile of junk. It flickered weakly but cast enough light to reveal the bones of the place, warped wood, rusted nails, mold in the corners. He unrolled his sleeping bag near the fireplace, fed it with dry twigs, and watched flames crackle into life. Outside, owls called. Wind rustled the treetops. A strange peace settled in his bones, raw but welcome. But just past midnight, something shifted. A soft creak. Ethan froze. It wasn't the house groaning. It was movement, cautious, almost human. He sat up, heart thumping. The fire had died to embers, and shadows pooled in every corner. Then he saw it, a pair of wide eyes glowing faintly from the darkest part of the room. A girl. Barefoot, half hidden behind a broken cabinet, covered in dirt. Her tangled hair hung in ropes around her face. She didn't blink. Didn't move. Just watched him, silent and still. Ethan slowly raised his hands. Hey, it's okay, he said gently, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know anyone else was here. No answer. She flinched when he took a step forward, then bolted toward the door. He caught only the flash of her thin frame vanishing into the night, feet silent on the forest floor. He ran to the porch, scanning the woods, but she was already gone, swallowed by darkness. Back inside, breath caught in his throat, Ethan sat down hard on the floor. Who was she? Why was she here? And why hadn't she said a single word? Small town library, gray afternoon. The next morning, Ethan wandered into the nearest town, a one-street place with peeling paint, quiet faces, and a diner that still had a phone booth outside. He headed straight to the town library, an aging brick building with dusty windows and a handwritten "Open" sign hung crookedly on the door. Inside, the librarian, a tired woman in her 60s, looked up as he approached the front desk. I'm looking for old records, he said, hesitant. About a shack out near Miller Creek. Might have belonged to the Hughes family. Her expression shifted. She stood slowly, disappeared behind a shelf, and returned with a weathered box labeled Missing Persons, 2019. Try page 4, she said quietly. It's not a happy story. Ethan flipped through the clippings. Then he saw it. Fire consumes cabin, parents perish, daughter missing. A photo was stapled to the corner. It was her. A little younger. Clean. Smiling faintly. Ivy Hughes, age 10. The article explained it all. The Hughes family had lived off-grid in the forest. One night, their cabin caught fire. The parents were found dead inside. Ivy's body was never recovered. They assumed she'd run and perished in the woods. That was 3 years ago. But she hadn't died. She had survived, alone, voiceless, and hiding in the shell of a different home. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. He whispered aloud, "She's been out there all this time." The librarian, now standing beside him, placed a hand on his shoulder. "We searched for weeks. Thought the forest took her." Ethan clenched the article in his hand. No more running. No more ghosts. He had to find her again, and this time, he wouldn't let her disappear. The shack's clearing and garden, early autumn afternoon. The days that followed blurred into a quiet rhythm. Ethan didn't see the girl again for a while, but he knew she was nearby. Twigs would crack in the trees when he stepped outside. Bits of food he left on the porch would vanish before morning. A blanket he hung on a branch disappeared one night, only to be found days later, folded near the creek. He started talking aloud when alone, about mundane things, how the tomato seeds he found in the pantry might still grow, how squirrels were eating his crackers, how quiet the world became when no one expected anything from you. It wasn't for himself. It was for her. In case she was listening. One morning, he stepped outside to find small footprints in the dirt. Heading toward the shack. Smaller ones circled the garden he had begun. He smiled. By the third week, he saw her again. She stood across the garden, near the edge of the trees, arms tight at her sides, eyes wary but curious. Her hair had been washed. She wore the coat he'd left on a tree stump. Ethan didn't move. Just knelt in the soil, planting the last of the carrots. "Good to see you again," he said gently. "I think these might actually grow." She tilted her head. Her lips parted, then closed again. Silence. Every day, she came closer. First to the garden's edge. Then to the porch. Finally, one cold evening, she sat beside him by the fire. Ethan didn't press her. He just handed her a mug of warm broth. That's when she whispered it, so quiet he almost didn't hear it. "Home." He looked at her, stunned. Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. She had spoken. After 3 silent years, her voice had found its way back. Early spring, newly restored shack. Afternoon sun through open windows. The shack had changed. Where once there were broken windows, now sunlight streamed through glass. Ethan installed himself. The roof no longer leaked, and the walls were patched with fresh wood. The old fireplace had become the heart of the home, warm, steady, safe. So had Ivy. Her hair was now brushed each morning. She still didn't speak much, but she smiled often. She laughed sometimes. She slept inside now, not in the woods. She helped in the garden, feeding birds, planting wildflowers, chasing squirrels like a girl who remembered how to be young. Ethan had become something unexpected, a guardian. At first unofficial, then slowly, legally. A social worker named Dana stood in the doorway one Sunday, clipboard in hand. Ivy sat on the floor, sketching with crayons Ethan had brought from town. Her drawings had once been dark lines and scribbles. Now she drew trees. Birds. A little house with smoke curling from its chimney. "She trusts you," Dana said softly. "And she's safe." That's more than we could have hoped for. Ethan watched Ivy look up and smile, a real one, full and unguarded. You think they'll let her stay? He asked, barely daring to hope. Dana nodded. They already have. Paperwork's just a formality now. Later that evening, Ivy curled beside him by the fire. She handed him a drawing, two stick figures standing in front of a little cabin. One had scruffy hair. The other had flowers in her hand. He looked at it for a long moment. I think we're gonna be okay, he said. She nodded, then leaned against him and whispered her second word since they met. Dad. And in that instant, Ethan understood. That $1 shack had never been cursed. It had just been waiting.